And now a warm and enthusiastic round of applause for our next speaker, author and channel, Wendy Zellea.
Wendy Zellea. I'm the one that can say it correctly. And I'm a literary channel, and I'm an author. I have published 5 books, all of which I have in the book room. And I also am an IT professional, which keeps me grounded. So my latest book is Being a Master in the New Era, Integrating the Codes of Ascension. We're living in a new era that began in 2013. A higher dimension found its way to Earth. It's become the new reality for those who are ready to experience it. Those of you who are living in the new era, which is all of you, are the masters. You used to be light workers, now you're masters, by the way. A master maintains all aspects of their light body in a coherent, clear, consistently enlightened state. And by doing so, you're participating in a process of becoming your higher self, which is the rite of passage into masterhood. Being a master is about integrating light codes. Once integrated, the light codes are read by your DNA. They then replace existing codes in the DNA that were formed by non-life-sustaining energy, thoughts and beliefs, pollution and environment, and they also awaken that which has been forgotten. It's also known as healing. DNA is the blueprint of your physical and spiritual bodies. Mainstream science labels approximately 90% of human DNA as junk, but actually that's where your spirituality resides. DNA acts as a translator, regulator, and compiler of energy codes that exist in the simultaneous, multidimensional incarnations of each person so that they're all compatible. The more DNA that's activated, the more enlightened you become. So your job now as a master is to integrate the codes. The codes will reprogram your DNA and your light body and raise your vibration. So how do you do this? Well, you actually don't do it. You basically just allow it to happen. Use your discernment to feel what resonates with you. You resonate with something because it contains the codes your light body requires. And you know when you're integrating codes because you feel inspired, you have an aha moment, you're at peace, and synchronistic events occur. You can receive light codes by visiting or connecting etherically with power spots, working with angels, archangels, and ascended masters, working with crystals. They are continuously being sent from the stars, the moon, and the sun. You can connect with photos of outer space and look at the stars. Being in or viewing nature, you can even view nature in pictures and get codes. Reading or hearing channeled messages, visiting or viewing photos of ancient ruins and stone circles, listening to inspired music, and attending Earthkeeper events in person, or remotely. This weekend is the Crystal Vortex. Listen to the speakers that are coming up, all of them. I know you listened to the last one was very relaxing. It's not just archaeology. There's codes in those pictures that you're going to see this weekend, and they're emerging into our consciousness, and they're meant for you. Ancient codes are coming your way. As you listen to the speakers, your cellular memory is being awakened to things that have long been forgotten. In the process, your DNA is being refurbished and restored. So I'd like to read a little teensy bit from my book. It's from a chapter called Sacred Sites. Some sacred sites have structures built on them, But it is not the structure that necessarily makes the site sacred. For example, millions of people have visited Stonehenge and the Giza pyramids, but what many might not realize is that the spot where those structures stand was sacred even before anything was there. So what makes such a place sacred? The earth energies below the site and the relationship to universal coordinates create an environment that in many cases can lift and rejuvenate a person. It can also contribute to the spiritual elevation of one who connects with the energy. In other words, there's a recognizable, discernibly unique vibration that is acknowledged by those who resonate with it and are drawn to it, while consciously aware it's only attainable at that or another place. Why then were structures built on sacred sites? Good question. Eons ago, this planet was inhabited by beings that were more advanced than those that are here now. Perhaps they were only visiting, but whatever their residential status, they built a worldwide, intelligently designed network of structural grids using telluric and celestial energies. The grid served as a load balancer, the purpose being to keep the light quotient of the Earth and its inhabitants at a coherent energetic level. Buildings and other stone structures were not just plopped here and there arbitrarily. Rather, there was a well-thought-out plan. This is why similar architecture can currently be found in places that are far removed from one another. It can be verified when one looks at a world map of sites that either currently exist, have been physically discovered, or those that have been only detected by sonar or infrared technology or Google Maps. After events, whether cataclysmic or climactic, destroyed or buried many of the sites, the spell, so to speak, was broken, and the vibration of the inhabitants that remained began to lower. As a result, the memory of how to use the ascension chambers was transformed into myth, and the chambers, which had previously been used for purposes of ascension, were then thought to be only burial places for royalty. Even today in Sedona, Arizona, some of the enlightened, visionary locals are able to see souls ascending from Thunder Mountain, which they have affectionately dubbed Ascension Mountain. In the new era, the evidence is reappearing. Moving on to my other book that I wrote this year, called Saving Atlantis, which is about a woman who chats online with a man who turns out to be in Atlantis. And she has to tell him what's going to happen and help him try to save Atlantis. And I chose this chapter because it takes place in the Law of One, and this weekend is a gathering of the Law of One. The two characters in this chapter, one of which is the main female Atlantean character named Zeona, and a male character who is the head of the Law of One. The chapter is called The Story of Zeona. There was great joy in the Law of One when Zeona accepted her position. The induction ceremony was to be held the same week, but first there was a private interview with Dundrub. The room where they met was one of the most beautiful places Zeona had ever seen. The ceiling was painted with the constellations of Pleiades, Arcturus, and Sirius. The windows were gracefully arched with stained glass images of dolphins, unicorns, and phoenix, and other totem animals. The carefully placed crystals caught her eye, diamonds, rubies, and emeralds, both polished and raw, regulated the energy of the room. The flowing curtains and fountains along with the walls added a gentle feeling to the atmosphere, which she felt as she walked towards the place where Dundrub sat. He stood up, and as she came near, he kissed her hand. even though they had met before. This was the first time Zeona sensed the true greatness of this man. He invited her to be seated, offering her refreshments of fruit, cake, and juice, which were on a small table between the chairs that faced one another. Zeona, he began, once they had settled in, I wish to begin by personally saying how honored I am that you will be part of the Law of One. Of course, we all knew we wanted you to be part of the law, but the decision rested upon you. I am honored as well. I had no idea I would be asked. Now, my dear, I'm going to tell you the story of the first woman named Zeona. You know you come from a long line of keepers of the principles of divine grace. But correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe you know the story of the first Zeona. No, I do not. I will tell you now. Even before Atlantis he began, before Lemuria and Mu, other beings inhabited the earth. These civilizations have long been forgotten, so much so that no evidence of their existence remains. Zeona had been a priestess in one such land. In that incarnation, she lived in a beautiful sanctuary on top of a high hill in the Temple of the Flower of Life. She spent her days secluded from the world. Her surroundings fulfilled all her needs. Fruits and vegetables were abundant in the garden, which she tended herself, and those from the outside left offerings of food and cloth for her robes. The offerings were made in gratitude for the work that Zeona did, the work that allowed all the beings of earth to live joyfully and in abundance. The golden flower of life in the temple was the receptor of light from the higher realms. Zeona channeled the light into the flower of life, which in turn broadcast it out to the world. The temple sat at the origin of a ley line so that the imperceptible light, which was being received, was transmitted through the Earth's electromagnetic grid to every part of the planet. It became the primary energy source for all inhabitants at the time, maintaining the ideal light quotient of each individual. There came a time, unbeknownst to Zeona, when a group of beings from another dimension began to harvest a portion of the light. This meant that over time, the vibration of light being sent to the world from the Temple of Flower of Life had become compromised. The effect of this was a weakening of the moral fiber of many of the Earth's inhabitants. The result was a desire for power in some, and suffering for those who had no coping skills for living in such a degradation of spirit. By the time Zeona discovered the breach, it was too late. Even though no one else blamed her, when she became aware of her part in the demise of her beloved land, she was devastated. She could no longer fulfill her purpose, so she left the temple and roamed the earth. She had no way to support herself, nor did she know how to rid herself of the guilt that began to consume her. She became destitute and nearly spiritless. She wandered directionless for how long she did not know, until she feared she could not go on any longer. As Zeona knelt on the ground, her forehead resting on a rock, she felt the presence of another, but she did not have the will to look up to see who was there. She had given up. She felt a warm hand on her shoulder. Someone was kneeling beside her, and again the same hand stroked her hair. Something about the touch of another revitalized her. She lifted her head and looked into the face of a man with kindness in his eyes. Holding out his hand for her, she grasped it, and his strong arm raised her to her feet. As she stood before him, she began to swoon. He caught her as she fell and carried her away. This man was one who had managed to maintain his high vibration when few others did. He carried the light of hope of humanity. When Zeona awoke, she was in a place she had never seen, a small temple of rejuvenation made of pure white marble. Over time, she was healed, and her spirit was restored, but never again would she see the Temple of the Flower of Life. The days of the keepership had ended. The world had changed, but all was not lost. Once she recovered, together she and the man, whose name was Orion, held a light so pure it would forever endure. It was the same light that would be born again into the incarnated keeper of the principles of divine grace. It was the same light that would be inside of each spiritual seeker and master in the days to come. This is the legacy that you, Zeona, have brought into your Atlantean life. I remember as you spoke the words, it all came back to me, she said. Now you know who you were and who you are. So enjoy the rest of the conference.